As Americans continue to face new and difficult challenges, Hiring America is speaking with veterans around the country about their experiences in the military and their successful transitions to the civilian workforce. This week, we're speaking with Oscar-winning filmmaker Oliver Stone, director of Platoon, Born on the 4th of July, Wall Street, JFK, and a number of other award-winning films. He's also a veteran of the U.S. Army, having served in the Vietnam War, where he received the Bronze Star with V device, the Purple Heart with Oak Leaf Cluster, and other service medals. Mr. Stone, thanks so much for joining us here on Hiring America.
Nice to be here, Lauren.
It's well known that during a time when Americans were being drafted into the Vietnam War, you not only enlisted in the Army, but asked to be placed in a combat unit. What was the reason behind this decision?
Well, it's a long story, but there's a memoir I wrote about my service in Vietnam. It's called Chasing the Light. It talks about my career up to 1986, including the movie Platoon, which I made many years later after the war. Had been raised patriotically. My father had been a Republican. So he'd been in the military, lieutenant colonel in World War II. And he believed in the war. He believed we were fighting communism as directed by Moscow. And he believed that it was a good thing. He didn't change his views until after I came back, and we had many fights. 1970s, he changed his views, and he thought it was an unnecessary war, to say the least. But I come from that background, and you understand, I thought I was fighting communism and I was serving my country. And I didn't like the people in college. I thought they were snide. I thought they were a bunch of, they didn't have the same feelings of genuineness that I felt. The military as it existed then, with a lot of volunteers, a lot of draftees, it was more of a citizens' army. It was a real nice mix of people. They weren't there. They hadn't volunteered. They were there. I said, "Why are you there, Stone? You're crazy. Why did you volunteer?" Well, I volunteered because basically I wanted to see what you guys were like. I wanted to get to the bottom of the barrel. What's America about? Those questions were in my head.
What was the environment like for you when you returned to America from Vietnam?
It was just indifferent. Nobody cared. Here we'd been running around this jungle I'd been in the jungle 15 months. I was in 4 different units. 3 of them were combat. I was in the 25th Infantry, and then I went to the 1st Cavalry in the North. And when you left Vietnam, it was like you were leaving. It was like coming from the moon or outer space back to Earth. Nobody knew what the experience was like.
How did your military service affect your worldview, politics, and filmmaking?
Well, Lauren, it was a world shakeup. It was a major shakeup. I came back. I put it this way. At first, I was just numb for a year. I was numb and alienated. I didn't protest. I didn't like the protesters, but it was a strange experience because you're alone in New York City, which is a gigantic city. And I had to adjust my thinking. I had to adjust everything. I had to become civilized again. I was used to, surviving. That was it. Every day mattered to survive. And when you come back to a system where everybody's running around trying to make a buck, profiting off, and doesn't care or think about the war, there was no thought about it. There was not even any discussions about it. Where I was from in New York, it was a sophisticated city. So I grew my way. I wrote a script called The Platoon. And it was about a real life platoon, but I mixed up all the characters from my 3 combat platoons. I took different characters from different platoons, put them into that one platoon and made that story. The 2 sergeants that ran the show existed. I met them in 2 different platoons, Elias and the character called Barnes, sergeants, both platoon sergeants and squad sergeant. They were the dominant figures in my experience over there. I did another movie, Born on the 4th of July, and I actually wrote that in 1977. Born on the 4th of July was a Ron Kovic's story, and he'd been shot and paralyzed in the Marines. And through him, I got to know the world of the veterans. A lot of them had been wounded, and I got to know another world. So that was my first experience with the veterans here in the States, in Los Angeles, at the veterans hospitals. That changed a lot of my thinking. Of course, Ron was very anti-war.
What do you remember about how Platoon was received by the American public, service members, and veterans at that time?
The picture went through the roof the moment it was cut. I mean, I had something on my hands that I realized was much bigger than me. It was immediately, even in rough cut form, people were saying, I've never seen anything like that. You know, I've never seen a reality like that. They'd seen other war films, but they had not seen something like this. It hit immediately and it went around the world, Lauren. It wasn't just America. It was a huge hit. I don't know why people just wanted, there is such a thing as people want to hear the truth, you know, they want to feel that there is something that is going on that they were not told. And I think that's what happened with the picture. I got thousands of letters, many veterans. I mean, they were the first audience. They lined up on the day one. It opened in New York City and in the Lowe's Astor Theater, and it was around the block, mostly men, mostly veterans, quiet, mute. They sat in the theater, very little noise. It was muted, but the show was over, and then the next show was supposed to start, but many of them were still sitting there for many minutes. You could, I had somebody from the film company told me that they were crying in there. Many of the people were crying.
PTSD has reached extraordinary levels in the veteran community. What's your perspective on this medical and emotional challenge for veterans? And do you have any advice for those who may be struggling with PTSD?
It's a staggering amount of veterans who are, you think it's over when you leave, it isn't over. You know, it continues. Some people are just bothered. And we didn't even have the word when I left. But as you can see, it took me a year to function just to get back into school. And I had the GI Bill. The GI Bill was very helpful and paid for about 80% of my tuition. It's always with you to some degree because I felt odd. I felt like I'm not the same way as my classmates, you know, that they know I'm older. They know that I'm just different. And you try to fit in, but you don't, you know, and that's the truth. I suppose the problem in Vietnam was a lot of the guys that I knew came from small towns. A lot of them were, you know, black, and they just didn't have many opportunities either. Or else they came from cities, you know, inner cities, Chicago, St. Louis, but mostly the South. And they went back to no opportunities, or sometimes they got jobs, but it was tough. It was very tough. There was no, people didn't say, hey, you went to Vietnam, you deserve a job. No, it was ignored. So PTSD is one of the issues, but also with the new wars, it's also, you realize that in Vietnam, maybe 59,000 of us were killed, but what was it, 200 and plus thousand people were wounded. I would say about 100,000 of them pretty intensely, and they lost limbs. And when you look at Iraq and Afghanistan, because of the nature of that war with the mines, with the IEDs and stuff, you're getting a lot of lower limbs that are lost, and it's horrifying what they have to go through.
Is there a message that you'd like to send to our servicemen and women and veterans who are watching right now?
Yeah, watch the movie, and what you can watch. I made 3 war movies: Salvador, Platoon, Born on the 4th of July, and also I made Heaven and Earth, which is also about the Vietnamese side of the conflict. Those are 4 war movies. I think you'll learn something about what war is like if you haven't been.
Oliver, thanks for joining us here on Hiring America.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. It was good talking to you. Good luck.